Congresswoman Susan Wild, Democrat of Pennsylvania, was in the chamber for the electoral vote count on January 6th. She was also trapped in the gallery above the floor as the mob flooded into the Capitol. She witnessed the riot firsthand. You see her there, later returning to help finish the people's business as the election results were certified that night. Congresswoman Wild joins me now live for more. First, Congresswoman, let me just say I would imagine these hearings are bringing up some pretty traumatic memories, seeing you there in the floor as these folks were coming in. So anyways, with that said, because I'm sure it is, how did the testimony yesterday about how close we came to a constitutional crisis hit home for you, and what stood out in that testimony, knowing what you know and seeing what you've seen?
Well, thanks, Phil, and thanks for having me. But let me just say this. My feelings as I'm watching these hearings is not about me or my role in this or what was happening to me that day. Quite honestly, I have really been very pleased that the hearings have brought the story together. Up until now, I feel as though it's been presented in almost fragmented form in a way that's difficult for the American people and indeed those of us who were present in the House that day to understand exactly how the former president incited this and encouraged it. But it is now being laid out in very methodical form. And that's what has really struck me. Yesterday's testimony, I was there in the hearing room as it was being given. It was absolutely astonishing to realize just how much the president was pressuring his vice president and, quite honestly, bullying him to try to get him to adopt his way of thinking about what could be done with the electoral certification.
Well, you're talking about former Vice President Mike Pence. What do you make of Pence's actions laid out as they were yesterday? Refusing to block the certification, refusing to leave the Capitol, not wanting the world to see America's vice president rushing, fleeing from the Capitol, and eventually completing his constitutional duty. What do you make of that?
Well, if the American people don't realize the significance of we were in what was an active combat zone at that point, although, frankly, those of us on the House floor were not nearly as aware as the vice president presumably was, because he had been taken out of the chamber. And the fact that he actually declined to get in the Secret Service automobiles, the fact that he was unwilling to leave the Capitol, I think should say it all to the American people. Number one, that he was absolutely determined that he was going to see this certification to the end. Secondly, that he was very concerned that if he left, that the certification would not be completed. And I think that is really telling. I'm glad that Vice President Pence did what he needed to do, what his constitutional duty was. I'm a little chagrined, more than a little chagrined, at the fact that he didn't speak out sooner, before January 6th. It may not have been very pleasant between him and the president, but we may have been able to avoid a lot of what happened on January 6th. And honestly, this is about our democracy. As I said at the beginning, this is not about me or what happened in my life that day. This is about the underpinnings of this country, which for 200 years has seen transition from one president to the next in a very peaceful way. For the first time ever, that was disrupted. And I have to tell you, it is frightening to think ahead. That's why these hearings are so incredibly important, so that we understand the significance of what happened on January 6th.
Should mention so many of us and our viewers have dogs, so don't worry about it. We completely understand. I am curious, what are you hearing from your Republican colleagues? Are they telling you anything about the hearings? And do you think these hearings are going to change any minds across this country, as polarized as we seem to be these days?
Well, we certainly are polarized. Let me say this. I've given that a lot of thought. I think that as we all know, the percentage of independent voters, those who don't identify with either major political party, is growing in this country exponentially, including in my own district. I have a feeling that those voters and those constituents may very well be impressed and very, very concerned about what they are learning through these hearings. Because unfortunately, you mentioned the polarization, and we are there. The fact is, these hearings aren't going to change a lot of Republican minds. They're not going to change a lot of Democratic minds. But there is a whole segment of our country that are unaffiliated constituents, and I believe they are watching this carefully and are probably very, very concerned about the future of the democracy in this country.
As polarized as we are, the answer to this next question will differ depending on who you ask. But I'll ask you this, being from a state that is so important, was so important for the 2020 election, will be so important for 2024. Should former President Trump and his allies face criminal charges for attempting what one federal judge called a coup in search of a legal theory, and that same federal judge called former President Trump a clear and present danger?
Well, that was pretty remarkable testimony. Some people commented on the fact that it was fairly painful in terms of the pace of that testimony, but the substance of it was incredibly significant from a very conservative federal judge. And the answer to your question is that what we need to know in this country is that no one is above the law. I am not a criminal lawyer. I was a lawyer for many, many years, but not a criminal lawyer. I'm not going to comment on whether the president or the former president should be criminally prosecuted, but I will say this. Well, I think what the American people want to know is that nobody gets treated differently because of their status or because they happen to have been the former president of the United States. So I hope that the Justice Department will view President Trump as well as any of his allies through the same lens that they would view any other American who committed these acts.
Just finally, Congresswoman, what are you watching for? What are you waiting to hear, expecting to see as these hearings continue?
Well, I think what we've seen so far is pretty remarkable, particularly the pressure and bullying on Pence, but also the admissions by people, including Attorney Eastman, of knowledge that what the president was proposing and was urging people to do was patently illegal and unconstitutional. That acknowledgement of the people closest to him is really concerning, because what it does is it speaks to me of the power of the presidency, for better or worse, and the fact that people around a president will carry out his orders without pushing back, without resigning, as some did. That's really very, very concerning. So what I will be looking for as we move forward is just bringing the entire picture to the American people and making sure that we understand from beginning to end why there has been why these hearings have been convened, what we are supposed to take from them, the fact that the president of the United States clearly incited a wrongful result and wanted to ignore the will of the voters and the actual votes that had been cast and wanted those cast aside. This is the kind of thing that we look on with great dismay in other countries, in dictatorships. I'm on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. We are looking at these situations around the world all the time. We literally came very close. Had it not been for the backbone of Vice President Pence, we were very, very close to a coup taking place. And that is very alarming.
Congresswoman Susan Weil of Pennsylvania, we understand that day was not about you and it is about democracy, but still glad you made it out that day and can still continue to do the bidding of your constituents. Thanks for the conversation today.
Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.